Quiet on set. So let's run slate.
Scene 1A, take 2. Scene 2A, take 2. 4A, take 3, second stakes. Take 1A.
My parents grew up very poor. My father's from out east, Rhode Island, so that made him Catholic. And my mother's from the South, so she was a devout Baptist. So when we moved to Savannah, we had to go to church at least twice a week. After a while, she became friends with a retired minister. His name was Leonard. He was gentle, soft smile, soft hands. And I remembered that he used to like to spoil his kids. So after a while, he began to spoil me too.
What's your name?
Emery.
Emery. What's your name?
Stephanie.
Stephanie. Where are you from?
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
What's your name?
My name is Claire.
Claire. Where are you from?
I'm from a town called Neenah in County Tipperary in Ireland.
¿Cómo te llamas?
Gabriela.
¿De dónde eres, Gabriela?
De Madrid, España.
What's your name? What's your name, sweetie? Can you tell me your story?
Well, I grew up in a small town, and we had a small family, but small, but we were close. And my dad worked for General Motors. He worked in the assembly line, attaching the steering wheel to the vehicles, and that always made me feel safe as a kid. And my mother was a waitress in a diner, part-time, because she wanted to have time to stay at home and be with the kids.
Obviously, my grandparents are from Ireland, and my favourite memories are spending my summers with my grandparents. I have a very special bond with my grandparents, as I am their first grandchild, so I was always the little dote, the apple of their eye, and I would spend most of my summer holidays with them.
It's okay, sweetie. I know you're scared.
Within like 6 months or so, Leonard began buying me clothes. And I remember one day he asked me if I wanted to go to the salon to get my hair done and to go to a movie after. And he said it would be okay because his daughter Laura would be there. And I grew up so poor. So for the first, it was nice to be accepted by a new family.
Bueno, a los 18 años me mudé a París para ser modelo, que me había pillado una agencia y nada, me fui ahí para trabajar y me encantaban las sesiones de fotos porque había tanta gente internacional, pero todos creativos y me sentía como en casa, ¿sabes? Y bueno, a los 19 me llamó mi agente que me habían conseguido una sesión para la marca del mes, que estaba súper ilusionada porque era, sí, probablemente la sesión de fotos más importante que había tenido ahí. Y nada, fui y al fotógrafo ya le había conocido, que él había trabajado con otra amiga mía y nada, nos habíamos conocido antes. Y para las fotos me vistieron en lencería, o sea, en bragas y sujetador solo, pero luego me pintaron por el cuerpo con pintura dorada.
One time, my mother got called into work on short notice, and she called my cousin, George, to come babysit me. And he was 15 at the time, and I just turned 8.
As well as my grandparents living there, my uncle lived there. He was a bachelor, and he never moved from home. He was also a musician, and in my grandparents' house, it was a cottage, so there was like the main room, and then there was a side room which would be known as the good room. And in the good room was his instruments, especially his organ. He liked to play the organ. And I would be given the privilege of being taken into the good room to be shown how to play the organ by my uncle. And I would be brought into the room, the door would be closed, he would switch on the organ, it was, electrical, and I was always standing. I remember that, I was always standing up. Well, I was small too, so to sit, and he would be behind me, and he would start to show me chords, like the C chord, the G chord, whatever. And then he would put his hand down my underwear and start feeling inappropriately, obviously, down there. And while he was doing that, he would be whispering in my ear, "You like this? This feels really good." And he would say it over and over while he was touching me and while I was touching the keys, so it sounded like he was. And that would go on for a very long time, and the whole time, like I said, I can even, there was a distinct smell that would come from him, from his breath, and it would be like, "This is our secret, and you're a good girl, and don't tell anyone, don't tell your parents, don't tell your dad," his brother.
Hey.
This night, while Laura was still in the bathroom, he leaned in and kissed me close to my mouth. And then again, on my mouth. And I froze. I wanted to yell stop, but Laura was still in the bathroom. I followed him downstairs, and he asked me if I'd ever seen an adult film. I was 13. I didn't even know what an adult film was, and my parents barely even let me watch television. I remember him just looking at me. He stepped back so he could look at me, and he said to me, "You're my favorite." He just kept repeating, "You're my favorite." And then he turned me around and began to take my jeans off and my underwear. And then he leaned my torso over. And before he inserted himself inside of me, I just remember hearing the echo. The echo of the woman screaming from the television. And I just remember being petrified that I didn't want to experience that kind of pain.
Al terminar la sesión, me dijo el fotógrafo que me fuera a quitarme toda la pintura. Tardé bastante tiempo y al salir se habían ido todos, menos el fotógrafo. Pasó todo tan rápido que no tuve tiempo realmente de procesar lo que estaba pasando y de repente tenía todo su peso encima de mí y no podía moverme y me desabrochó los vaqueros, empezó a bajármelos y yo, no sé, intentaba quitármelo, pero no podía. O sea, no tenía suficiente fuerza para quitármelo de encima. Y luego él se bajó también los pantalones y yo pues empecé a llorar, empecé a decirle que no, que por favor, que no quería hacer esto y nada, le daba igual. Él siguió y siguió y... Y nada, o sea, no quería ni mirarle. Y recogí todas mis cosas y me fui corriendo. Y ya él me dejaba ir.
I remember he wanted to shut the door, and I wouldn't shut the door. He wanted me to shut the door for him, and I just like stood still, like shocked, frozen. And I refused to shut the door, so eventually he let that go, and then he kept saying that my parents wanted me to have nap time. So I got into bed and he got in next to me and he said it was time to take a nap. And
What did you do?
Well, at first he didn't do anything. I just sat there. I just remember for a long time just staring at the ceiling. And he didn't move, and I didn't move. And then I just felt his hand move under the sheets. And over my pants, and he started to unzip my pants, and I screamed, which scared him, so he moved away, and I just got up and ran into the bathroom and closed the door. And I just remember staring at myself in the bathroom mirror. I can still see myself even though I was only 8. I just look so small, and I felt guilty, but I didn't know why. And then I remember I went and I ran to this park. I just wanted to be outside, and I remember I felt scared of my parents coming back because I felt guilty about what happened.
If you could confront him, what would you say to him right now?
Well, I would tell him how it affected me, how he didn't have the right to take my innocence, to take my trust, to interfere with who I am as a person, like my sexuality or my, you know what I mean, that like, how dare he take that from me, you know? And to this day, I don't like the word why, but I'd like to ask him why. You know, why did he do this to me? You know, and then part of me wouldn't want to confront him. Just, you know, he's gone.
Y después de eso también me cambió mucho. Me sentí como si me había robado una parte de mi personalidad, porque de repente es que no tenía confianza para nada, ni en mí misma, pero especialmente con los hombres. Ya no podía tener una relación con ellos, ni platónica, ni sexual, ni romántica, ni nada. O sea, si un tío me pedía salir, automáticamente estaba pensando, ¿qué quiere este de mí? No, que me quiere usar o me quiere algo. No, tardé mucho tiempo en volver a encontrar alguna alegría en mis relaciones.
I want people to know that if they speak up, that people will listen to them and give them a platform to share their stories. And I also think it's really valuable for men to, sorry, I don't mean all men, but I mean, I just think there's this experience that we don't talk about. And I think anyone who hasn't had any experience of trauma, I think it's helpful to see that side of it, to be able to see through that lens, so that we can heal on both sides. Because my trauma is now becoming a trauma with men that I'm with, even, are victims of this crime through me. And I don't want women that are younger than me to be in this situation. I don't want to watch this happen again in 20 years. I don't want to. I think enough is enough.
What's your name?
My name is Charlotte.